The Daily Wake Up. Visualize your future, behave in ways needed to create your future, execute your new behaviors to fulfill your mission. We are mission chasers.
Good morning, gentlemen. This is John Vickers, owner of Explosive Performance Academy and creator of the Courageous Men program. We help men like you become the most elite versions of themselves through fitness, faith, family, and finances. And this is the Daily Wake Up. So I've been sitting down here in my office for 30 minutes before actually starting this podcast today. I knew what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't necessarily know how to talk about it. And I say this because I mean, this one's kind of a somber one today. Wednesday I had one of my cousins passed away. He's 36 years old. I'm 39. He's younger than me. We were never really close, which is weird to say because we did a lot of things together. But my cousin was always around. My mom was really close to my grandma and grandpa, and my cousin was always at my grandma and grandpa's house because his mom and dad didn't really take care of him. His mom didn't know really how to take care of him, and she wore the pants in the relationship. So his dad was really doesn't talk a lot. I've probably heard him say 200 words in my whole life. He was always at my grandma's house, and we were there pretty often as well. But he was always there, and I say we did a lot of stuff together, but we weren't very close because I honestly didn't like him. He was, to make up for my aunt's lack of parenting and lack of connection and love, she would buy him anything that he ever wanted. So he would literally get whatever he wanted. When he turned 16, he got his license. He got a brand new $50,000 truck, $55,000 truck at the time, which now there are trucks that are $100,000. But this was, he had the choice between a Ford Lightning SVT truck or a Ford Boss truck, and he ended up picking the Boss, which was this yellow truck with a black stripe down the middle. It was a cool truck, but he was one that you couldn't have a conversation with. You couldn't have a conversation with because all he talked about was his possessions. He didn't talk about anything else of value in his life because he really had nothing else to live his life off from. Everything was about his possessions. Everything was about what he had or what was bought for him because he didn't really have money. It's crazy because he growing up, he was one of my family members. My family's pretty fucked up, really, to be honest with you. A lot of drugs in my family, a lot of addiction in my family, heroin. A couple of cousins were big heroin users. Actually had an uncle die from heroin. One was a coke dealer. Um, I've heard some stories about some uncles, women at the time, like being crackheads and being cokeheads. Like there was just a lot of drug abuse in my family, and he was, besides me and my sister, he was the one that I expected to be like more straight and narrow, even though I have another cousin who's about his age who's way more straight and narrow, and both his mom and dad were drug addicts. But I expected him to be more on the straight and narrow. And he started, like, he didn't go to college. He ended up like getting a job out of high school, and he was kind of in and out of jobs. He was a firefighter or a volunteer firefighter at one point. He wanted to be a cop, and then he wanted to be a police officer, or I'm sorry, and then he wanted to be a firefighter. And then there was like always an excuse made for him. Always. Like there was always an excuse on why he couldn't do something or why he did something, and why things like just like he couldn't do things. He ended up like quitting the volunteer firefighter job because he, I guess, had PTSD. I don't know. It was all just an excuse of why like he couldn't hold jobs. And then he started working in assisted living facilities. And I don't know if he quit or got fired a couple times. And then my grandpa got sick, and my parents camp a lot during the summertime. So my mom actually hired him, even though my grandpa like took care of him when he was growing up. My mom hired him to take care of my grandpa, and he did a horrible job, like a legit horrible job. He was very short with my grandpa. My grandpa would not like listen to what he was telling him to do because he just wasn't treating him well. And my mom was paying him. She was paying him pretty good. And he, like Megan and I would go to see my grandpa once a week and see my aunt and make sure my aunt was good. And typically actually Megan did it more than both of us did it, but Megan would go out there and didn't want to leave grandpa alone, so she would wait for my cousin to come over to watch grandpa, and he'd show up with a video game in hand and like just very short with my grandpa, and Megan like would come back and he'd like already be gone, or he'd leave right away, and there was like nothing done. And one day, so we live 30 minutes away from my grandpa, and my cousin lived literally 2 minutes from my grandpa. And he complained to Megan once about it being a far drive for him to come and take care of grandpa a couple times a day. Like he literally lived 2 minutes from him. So like I said, there was always an excuse. And there was always something going on, something wrong with him. There was never something great with him. He kept getting sick. And Megan finally like started talking to my aunt about like what's going on, like why is he sick? He was in the hospital on a regular basis. And Megan was like, what's going on? And she was like pushing back at my aunt because my aunt just continued to make excuses for my cousin. And finally it came out that he was an alcoholic, and he was drinking a bottle of vodka a day, like a fifth of vodka a day. And he just ended up dying on Wednesday. I got a call from my mom saying that he passed away. He just He had collapsed on his bed, and my aunt walked in and tried to revive him, called 911, and nobody could revive him. And like I'm gonna get to a point in the story, but this like this makes me like sad about the situation, sad about the way everything happened, but it also makes me look at things like my cousin got to a point in his life where he had no direction. And because he had no direction, he had no vision. He had no real goals in life. He was 36 years old and he was living at home. He was single. Like video games and Star Wars and talking about his cars and his possessions were his life. 36 years old. It was about video games, Star Wars, and his cars, which at this point, his cars were not very valuable. Like, he was 36, didn't have a wife, didn't have kids, didn't have anything. He had, and cats. He had cats. Cats. Video games, Star Wars, and his possessions. That's what his life was. He had no vision. He had no goals. He had nothing was there for him to work towards. He didn't have to work for anything. Like legit did not have to work for anything. He was given everything that he wanted in his life. And that's one thing that with my parents, they made me work for shit. We didn't struggle for shit. Like we lived paycheck to paycheck, but we didn't struggle for shit. But I still had to work for my shit. Like I wasn't just given my shit. And this is the problem today. Like we have so many kids that are being given shit and given this. They're not being given these boundaries of what they can and cannot do, and they think they can do whatever the fuck they want, and they make these weird fucking decisions that don't make any damn sense. Like I'm all for people having opportunities in this life. Especially women. I have 2 daughters and I have my wife. Like I want them all to be successful. But we have so much fucking crazy shit going on in this world right now that things like this are happening. When we're not given boundaries, when we're not given direction, we have no vision in our lives. We have no goals to achieve in our life because we've been given everything. So that's one thing that I want you to think about right now. What is your vision in this life? What are these goals that you have for the rest of your life? I don't care how fucking old you are or how young you are. You still have things that you can achieve in your life. You have goals. Create a vision of what you want. Create goals, set goals, and create a path to achieve those goals. Don't be like my cousin who passed away at 36 years old because he had no vision and no goals. Set yourself up to fucking succeed. Have a vision, have goals. Like this mental health stuff, like it's real. But people take their lives when they have no vision in their life. Create a vision of what you actually want. Don't be like my cousin, who's now no longer with us. Create a vision. And you can do this. We all can do this. Chase your fucking mission. Chase your fucking mission.